Welcome to Sakshi TV's special immigration show with attorney Ms. Prashanthi Reddy from Law Offices of Prashanthi Reddy PLLC. Please note that Sakshi TV now has 3 immigration shows every week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. EST with attorney Ms. Sheila Murthy, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Prashanthi Reddy in English, and on Friday at 6 p.m. EST with attorney Bhanu Vilendra. Please tune in to ask your questions. If you are an immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call 866-725-7441. Before we begin the show, please note that the information provided on this show is not a legal advice and is for general informational purposes only. Sakshi TV or its agents will not be responsible for use of information. If you need a specific legal advice, please contact the attorney directly. Ms. Prashanthi needs no introduction. But if you need consultation, please log on to reddyesq.com for contact information. And when you connect with them, don't forget to mention Sakshi TV. From the beginning, reddyesq.com has put a wealth of free information and online tools in the hands of immigrant community and for the benefit of US employers. The reddyesq.com site provides you with latest and cutting-edge information on US immigration law and policies explained in terms you don't have to be a lawyer to understand. Today's topic is H1b registration updates. We will continue the knowledge session along with the news and updates on latest immigration, followed by Q&A. Before we get into the topic, you can call us on the numbers on the screen for questions related to immigration and also ask for tips. Hello, Ms. Prashanthi. How are you doing?
How are you?
Very well, thank you. Like I said, it's very good to have you back. So, should we get started?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so Ms. Reddy, do we have any latest immigration updates for this week? Anything on H1b registration?
Yes, so we're continuing with our H1b registration knowledge session simply because I know we've been doing it over the past few weeks, but it's an important time to do it simply because, March 1, yesterday was the date that H1b registration opened up.
Yeah.
And, it is of predominant interest to our viewers, and it's what's going on, in the immigration field right now, because this is the only chance we have throughout the year to file new H1Bs. So it's a pretty significant event. So that's why we, decided to continue with our H1B registration knowledge session. And I'm also hoping to give some updates, recent updates, so you will learn something new about your H1B registration as well. So to start off with, as Thorny suggested, the updates and some important dates that I wanted to give you. As I said, March 1, the first day H1B registrations can be submitted. That was yesterday, beginning at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's when it opened up. March 18th is a very important date to remember. That's the last day that H1B registrations can be submitted. So again, that ends at 12 p.m. again. It's not the entire day of March 18th, it's 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Another important date is April 1. That's when it's anticipated that you will have the results from your lottery. That's when the lottery takes place and the results are announced. And that's the date that you will be able to file your H1s. So just to clarify, the results might be announced earlier, but April 1st is the dates by which you will for sure get your notices and will be able to file your H1 cases if you choose to do so. The last but not the least of the dates is June 30th of this year, and June is the last date that you can file the H1B petitions that were picked under this lottery. So remember, you have 90 days, so that's June 30th to file the H1B petitions that were picked by April 1st. Now remember, there could be another lottery. Last year we had 3 lotteries, and every lottery there will be a 90-day deadline to file your H1. So the deadline for this lottery is June 30th. So having said that, to move on to some updates, very important updates, and we know whenever there is something, especially with the H1B registration, there's always something new happening, and they always give us guidance in the last moment. The day before it's going to open, the day that it opens is when we get guidance, so this is very important. So the first guidance is on, we have some new guidance on duplicate filings. Now, everybody has been confused about duplicate filings, whether it can be done, cannot be done. If it can be done, what are the circumstances under which duplicate filings can be done. Now, nothing has changed with reference to the basic circumstances. So an employer can never file two CAP registrations for the same employee, but an employee, the beneficiary or the applicant, can have several different companies file for them. So while the employee or the applicant is not bound by the duplicate filings, they might be bound under certain circumstances, and I'll explain. But the employer definitely is bound by it, which means the employer can only file one case per person. But that particular person can have several people file registrations for them. So, of course, the exception to that is one person cannot have several registrations filed for themselves if the job is the same. So, suppose Joe is filing registration through company A, B, and C, and the end client is the same, and the job is the same, the PO is the same, then Joe cannot file several H1B registrations under their name. But say Joe files through A, B, and C companies a registration through each company, so he has 3 registrations, and thereby increases his chances, right, of getting picked. Then if USCIS finds out there's a collusion between those 3 companies, A, B, and C, decided that they will file to increase the chances of Joe getting into, getting a chance in the CAP, then that's a problem. USCIS will again look into that, and if they find that out, they can take several actions. They can cancel the registration. Once a registration is picked, and they can stop all the employers from filing for Joe. Even if they allow it to file, they can deny the case, or they can even revoke the case once approved for all 3 companies, company A, B, and C. Now, say Joe files through company A, B, and C, but the A, B, and C don't collude with each other. They have different jobs. They have a requirement, independent requirement for Joe, and there's no collusion. There's no agreement between them, or they don't even know that the other company has filed. Then we don't see an issue, because multiple registrations are possible for a single applicant as long as it's through different employers. So in lieu of this, USCIS has put in additional attestation. So when you go to register your cases, you will see there's an additional attestation before you click submit, and basically the attestation will say that you that you are filing this H1B registration. It's not frivolous, and the sole purpose of this is not to increase the applicant's chances of being picked, and you attest under penalty and perjury that the registration reflects a legitimate job offer. That means you actually have a need for this beneficiary, and you're not colluding with other companies, another registrant, a petitioner or agent, or any other individual or entity to submit a registration to unfairly increase the chances of this beneficiary being picked. So there's an attestation there. You have to say yes, okay, I promise, I attest to that. It's non-frivolous and it's a legitimate job offer, etc., etc., and you'll be allowed to proceed. Now, the reason they did this is there was a lot of criticism, and there was also a lawsuit, and we'll talk about that next as to what is happening with that lawsuit. But there's a lawsuit and there's criticism about duplicate filings, because when Joe files 3 cases, and if Alex files 1 case, obviously Joe has an advantage over Alex. That's one thing. And the other thing is that now Joe can use only 1 registration. If all 3 of his registrations get picked, then he's wasting the 2 other numbers. That's another criticism. And even though they're doing several lotteries to make sure everyone gets picked, you can never be sure with USCIS whether they're actually using all the lottery numbers or not. So it's an inefficient way of doing things. And, I don't blame the people who are doing it because it's such a big deal, and they have so few visas and so much need. Businesses have, a lot of need now, especially in the IT industry, for qualified candidates. And this is the best way they can get experienced qualified candidates. So, while I just think the system is flawed and it leads to obviously people trying to game the system. So that's the update on duplicates. Again, to give you an update, so with reference to the duplicates, again, if you're company A and you file for Joe twice, earlier the system never used to alert us on the duplicate filing. So, oftentimes if you're filing 100 cases, you might just, by mistake, the HR might put Joe's name 2 times, and then both Joe's registrations will get denied. And there's no system alert to show that, there's a duplicate entered into the system. And so this was a suggestion again by a lot of stakeholders, and USCIS has implemented this. I'm sure, it was an easy fix. So now if we enter a case twice, it'll alert us, and, we can ensure that way that we don't enter 2 cases and that both don't get denied. With reference to an update on the H1b registration related litigation that I was talking about duplicate filings, about 510, and I mentioned this in my last show, 510 foreign nationals filed a lawsuit against USCIS to modify or remove the H1b registration process, and they were mentioning how people were defrauding the system because of USCIS was allowing duplicate filings. And then because of that, people who filed only one case were being affected. So those affected group of people filed a lawsuit. And recently, there's another organization. They filed a summary judgment, basically, a conglomerate of IT companies. And they asked for this to be put on hold, and they demanded that the current lottery process be continued. On the whole, I must say the lottery process is a good system, because otherwise you'd have to file an entire case, and it was a waste of energy, time, and money to file an entire case and then have it rejected by the lottery. Instead, it's better to do a lottery system, which is what they're doing now. But of course, there are glitches in the system and which need to be corrected or resolved. And I don't know how far the attestation clause helps. But so anyway, so with reference to the registration litigation, so it's pretty much moot right now, and H1b registration will continue as is, at least for this year, and we'll see what happens in the future. With that, I am done with my updates on H1b registration.
Right. So we've gotten quite a lot of updates, and for that, thank you, Ms. Reddy. But moving on, I mean, there are some FAQs about H1b registration that I'm sure a lot of our viewers would want to be updated on. So apparently, this is going to be a new H1b cap registration process. So are there any noted differences?
So the only significant difference is that attestation process that I talked about. And also the other update is, they have a way in the system to weed out duplicates. So by mistake, we don't file duplicate petitions. So those are the two significant updates that we have with reference to the registration process.
Right. So how can these H1b registrations be submitted? I mean, how does one register?
In order to register, you have to submit it online. So you have to go to the My USCIS website.com website, and you'll have to open an account. And if you're doing it through an attorney, there's a different process. If you're doing it on your own, there's a different process. You have to select I'm a H1b registrant. You have to fill out the required information, and you have to pay a registration fee of $10. And once you verify all the information and submit, then in April, and pay the fee. You can pay the fee either by e-check or you can pay by credit card. Make sure that the fee goes through, especially if you're submitting multiple applications. Sometimes the bank might think there's a fraudulent transaction and may stop the fee. So make sure you talk to your bank before you submit the application, or your credit card company for that matter. Then what will happen is April 1st, USCIS will do a lottery. They'll randomly select 85,000 registrants. So it's 65,000 bachelor's degree and the 20,000 is the master's degree. And then they'll send out notices via email, and also you can log in actually to your the same portal that you're registering in to see who was picked. And in the portal itself, there will be notices, and you print out those notices and submit them along with your H1b petitions, actual petitions, and those have to be filed within 90 days, that is by June 30th.
Right. Right. So what information must the employers provide as a part of this process?
So the information is really related to the name of the company, the address, the federal ID number. This is the information that's needed from the company. So it's basic information. There's not much that is required.
Right. So, Ms. Reddy, could you please tell us if attorneys can submit H1B registrations on behalf of, their employer or clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Attorneys can submit H1B registrations. And as I said, attorneys will have their own account. And what will happen is you have to first create your account, and then you go to the attorney's account, and then the attorney will send you, will create the registration for you and send you a username and password, ID code. And once you enter that ID code into your system, you'll be able to view the registration that the attorney prepared, and then you have to say review, submit. And once everything is okay, once you submit it, then again it goes back, the attorney gets a notification, and it sounds complicated, but it isn't. The attorney gets a notification and they just have to pay the fee and submit.
Right, right. So what attestations are the employers supposed to make when they're submitting an H1B cap registration?
So the most important attestation is the attestation with reference to the fact that it is that it actually is a bona fide registration, and that they fully intend to submit a H1B and have a job, a bona fide job for the beneficiary, and they're making this attestation at the time of filing. So at the time of filing, you have to have the intent of, and you have to have the job for this particular beneficiary. And you have to fully intend to file the H1 if the H1B gets selected.
Right. Right. So, Ms. Reddy, is there a limit on how many registrations an employer can submit?
There is no limit. Cognizant, TCS, these big companies submit thousands of registrations. Literally thousands. So 3,000, 4,000. So there is no limit, but you can only have one account. So the thing is, if for one email address you can only have one account. So you can't operate that same account. Two people can't operate that same account simultaneously. So if you're filing a lot of applications, then you should open then two accounts with two different email addresses, so you can submit your registrations quicker if you have a lot of registrations.
Right. So, but I mean, you have kind of answered this, but we're just kind of reassuring, all our other viewers who've probably missed the first half of this session. Can an employer submit more than one registration for an individual employee?
No, absolutely not. Cannot.
Right. So, when will the selection process be conducted?
So the selection process takes place after the deadline, which is the deadline for everyone to register is March 18th, 2020. So That's what, 15 days, 16 days from now. And once that's done, then and once they submit it in that USCIS online portal, then they have then they do the lottery system, and then they start sending us results. And by April 1st, we should have all the available results in, so that because April 1st is the first day that employers can actually file, the H1B if they get picked.
Right, right. So if an employee's registration is selected, say, and when does the employer get to file the H1B Capitation?
So the H1B Capitation, as I said, can be filed within 90 days of the selection. So from April 1st, you have 90 days to file your H1B Capitation. If you don't succeed in filing it within that 90 days, then you've lost your registration. You'll have to re-register next year. If you do file it but it gets denied after the 90 days, then you're out of luck again. But if it gets denied before the 90 days, then you can refile. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Right. So if an employee's registration is selected, and can the employee pay the H1B application filing fees and attorney fees?
So the filing fee, for sure, the employee cannot pay, because this is an employment-based case. So an employer is supposed to pay at least the part of the filing fee. Most probably the employee can pay the premium processing fee. That shouldn't be a problem. Generally, that part of the fee that's related to the 750 and the 1500, part of that has to be paid by that part has to be paid by the employer. And in general, if USCIS finds out that the employer is not paying the fee and they're making the employee's fee pay the other part of the fee, then they look down upon it. They may look at it as suspicious. They may think of it as employer taking money from the employee, so not an actual valid offer of employment, but the employer is actually taking money to do this just to get them a H1, a dummy H1. So I'm always cautious on advising employees to pay some amount. Of course, the USCIS fee, part of it they cannot pay at all, but even the rest of it, and even the attorney fee, I'm cautious whenever I advise that employees can pay.
Right. Right. So, Ms. Reddy, can H1B cap registrations be filed via premium processing?
So yeah, there is premium processing available for cap cases, but it keeps changing. So we have to see at the time of filing what the current law is. So if USCIS thinks that they cannot, because there are thousands and thousands of cap cases, that they cannot they will not be able to honor the 30 days period, then they will close H1B cap cases for premium processing, and they won't allow it. If they think that they can manage it, then they might open it up. But in general, H1B cap cases, they usually, at least in the beginning, they don't allow premium processing. In most years I've seen that. So let's wait and see what they do this year.
Right. Right. So, Ms. Reddy, is this new H1B cap registration process a good thing for the employers?
I think it's a good thing, because previously when we had the system, the way it used to work is that it's just wasteful, because we'd spend time and money preparing the entire petition, and we have to send it by mail, and waste of paper, waste of, as I said, time is everything, and the employers had to spend money to not the fee, because the fee would be returned, the USCIS fee, but the attorney fee, or they'd have to hire someone to do their H1s, whoever their HR is or whoever it is, and all this had to be sent to USCIS, and then they would do the lottery, and then after that, if it was not selected, and only 30% of the cases are selected, 30 to 40, so the rest of the 70 cases would be sent back. So imagine the burden on USCIS, on the postal service, 85,000. So they get 3 times that. the burden on the postal services, on FedEx, etc., and the waste of paper, everything. So it was a waste, a sheer waste of time and money and resources. So now all they have to do is go online, enter some information into their portal, and based on that information and the name, passport number, etc., that's entered into the system, they do pre-registration, and then you file the actual petition with the checks, and you make your effort to send out a complete package. Then it makes sense. So I would say, yeah, registration is definitely a good thing, but there's some nuances. There's some things that need to be like duplicate filing, that need to be, I think, looked at again, and ironed out. And also, we always see in the beginning of the CAP season, there's glitches on the website. Everyone experiences those glitches because they're updating things, the login username doesn't work, the page goes blank, there's an error message. So they haven't, though they're getting better every year, they have not completely eliminated those issues or those glitches that we're having, while using the system.
Right. So, Ms. Reddy, with that, we come towards the end of the session. But since the next 18 days are going to be very crucial for a lot of the immigrants, what is your golden immigration message to get them through this difficult time? Any words of wisdom?
So I would say, obviously time is of essence. So put in your registration as soon as possible, but don't compromise on, making sure that everything is correct. Do your due diligence. Make sure that you're not in such a hurry that you're putting in the information wrong, or make sure that you have actually looked at the qualifications of the beneficiary, and you've looked at the job, and you know that the beneficiary qualifies for a H1. There's no point in doing a registration and it gets approved when you can't actually file the H1. So my suggestion is to go through an attorney. Though the registration process may seem simple, I say this with complete sincerity that it's important to do the due diligence to make sure that you're able to file the petition after you actually before you actually do the registration. So I think that would be my golden rule. Time, do it quickly, and do it efficiently, and outsource your immigration work to a professional.
Right.
That's my advice.
Beautiful. That was a very beautiful message. Thank you, Ms. Reddy. Thank you for being on the show and for sharing your valuable insights with all our viewers. We're very grateful for your contribution. You're watching Sakshi TV. Thank you.